aita for telling my fiancé that if her cousin gets married on our wedding day that they won't be welcome at our wedding. Original post. My fiancée, Nicole, and I had chosen our wedding date, booked the venue, and notified the immediate members of the family of the date and the pending save-the-date mailings. Amber, who's Nicole's cousin, got really mad when she learned we set a date for our wedding. She called Nicole upset, saying we picked the same day as her wedding. The thing is, Amber and her boyfriend weren't even engaged yet, but they insisted that they knew that was the date they planned to tie the knot. Their plan was to have a quick courthouse wedding with their families and then hop over to our wedding afterward. I told everyone I wasn't comfortable with that because Amber's side of the family are completely self-centered and I didn't want them trying to take over our wedding/reception. I stood my ground and told Amber and her boyfriend that if they got married on our wedding day, they wouldn't be welcome. And I'd let the planner and venue staff that they would be turned away, and I'd be willing to hire extra staff to make sure they were refused entry. I also got wind that Amber's boyfriend lost his job, which just strengthens my suspicion that they're trying to score a free reception at our expense. Nicole, my fiancée, is upset because they're family, but I'm exhausted with Amber and her boyfriend always making everything about them. Even our wedding plans. I'm considering hiring an editor to sort out the paragraphs and just to clear things up. We're definitely not getting married on Halloween. Edit 2. My fiancé doesn't want to share the wedding/reception for those assuming she wants to. She doesn't want to deal with the familial fight that will break out between her side of the family and Amber's side of the family. Her parents are paying half and I'm paying a quarter and my parents are paying a quarter. We're not getting married on a weekday. The city Amber lives in has set hours for the JP courts for weddings. Now for the top of comments before reading the update. Not until the fish jumps. Not the whole. Totally. Sounds like they're wanting a free reception. Still the spotlight, but with none of the monetary obligations. Red Bull medal. Not the whole. The cousin is a major a hole for choosing to book a wedding, knowing that her own cousin was getting married that day. In this situation, the one who books the date first is usually in the right, and it's pretty awful for her to pick the same day as yours. I mean, there are 364 other days to choose from, right? So, don't feel bad about it. You're totally right. It seems like they might be eyeing your reception. Just a heads up, even if they change their wedding date, they might still try to swing by yours. Why not just leave them off the guest list entirely? I originally rushed. Oh, if I could do that, I would. But she refused to tell the rest of her family the crap they're trying to pull, and if we uninvite them, she'll have to explain why. Now for the update. Happy news, everyone. The wedding went off this past weekend, and not only did my wife's cousin not get married on her wedding day, she dressed as a normal guest. She did, however, get drunk and pee in some bushes. No one in her family was surprised to hear about that. Well, everyone, a lot has happened in the last few weeks. Nicole's cousin and fiancé have announced their wedding date 2 weeks after ours. It came down to a comment I made in front of Nicole's twin sister, Brittany, and Brad. Announced their engagement and said that they were getting married in October, but no specific date. During our chat, Brittany brought up the announcement and suggested that they were trying to hog the spotlight again. I mumbled something about them even stealing the wedding day. Nicole mentioned she had discussed it with Brittany, who knew about their plans but didn't disclose that they had picked the same day for their wedding. Brittany lost her mind about it. She called Amber and Emma's mom and read them the riot act. It was both glorious and extremely uncomfortable to listen to. There's lots of stuff between those parts of the families. Brittany told them they had a week to figure out when in October they were getting married, other than our wedding day, or she would tell everyone in the family what they were trying to do. Emma's mom tried to downplay it all, but Brittany wasn't having any of it. Even though she's about 5 minutes older than Nicole, she was acting like she was a much older protective sister. It was a long phone call, but in the end, they figured the jig was up. A little while after we set our wedding date, Amber and her partner announced theirs. But things took a turn for them when her partner lost his job. Their families couldn't afford a big wedding anymore, so they scaled it down, inviting only a small group and planning a Zoom ceremony. Surprisingly, our honeymoon dates almost overlap with their wedding day, which is quite a twist. And about my boyfriend of 6 years, well, he might pop the question soon. But I'm having second thoughts about our relationship. Am I being wrong for considering leaving him now? Plus update original post. I, 23 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 25 male, for almost 6 years. This one's kind of a doozy, so I apologize. My boyfriend and I started dating my freshman year of college in 2017. Everything was going really well and everything just fell into place. It just felt right until the pandemic hit in 2020 and we all got sent home to finish college virtually during my senior year. We have been in a long-distance relationship since because I then began attending graduate school for speech therapy to save money. I lived with my parents and he lived with his who lived 3 hours away from me. When the long distance began, my only ask of him was that we'd be married when I graduate in August 2023. In our families, it is super important that we are married before living together. So we had this whole conversation about purity, culture, and all that stuff. He thought it was a reasonable idea and said he really wanted it. The plan was that we'd tie the knot and move in together once I finished school. But here's the tricky part. He still hasn't popped the question, even though we agreed on it. He mentioned he wanted to talk to my parents first, get their blessing, and then plan the proposal. He initiated a conversation with my parents about next steps in November 2022, and hasn't said anything up until last week. He's been at my house 3 times and never sought after opportunities to say something. He's putting it off, and there's only one reason why he would. It would be one thing if he had expressed that he wasn't ready for marriage, whether that be not being emotionally ready or financially ready. But he's been talking a lot about engagement for the last 2 years, getting my hopes up, and then nothing happens. One important thing to note is that he is an only child with a mom who has a meltdown when the idea of marriage moving out is even mentioned. She's been an issue throughout our entire relationship because she is constantly trying to create division between us, whether that is talking crap about him to me or vice versa. He has now begun expressing fears of leaving his parents when he's the only one there to take care of them, and he's afraid of what they'll think of him if he leaves for a career opportunity, or for me who is seeking career opportunities in speech therapy in various locations. Moving on to the talk he had with my parents, this is where my biggest worry kicks in. At first, he told my parents he planned to propose during the summer. Then things took a turn when he mentioned to them that he was afraid of commitment and giving things up. When my dad asked him to explain, he said, "I really enjoy having my own time and space to play video games and watch sports, which my parents let me do. I'm scared to give that up for a wife or to help with kids." This kind of broke me because he would have never said anything like this before moving back home with his parents. He's extremely comfortable with his life and doesn't want to change it. But I want to change mine. I want to move out and get an amazing speech therapy career opportunity. By August, I've always had this vision of getting married and starting a family. This was something I wanted with him, but his parents not being on board and him expressing concerns to everyone but me have changed things. Our relationship hasn't been the same since we started this long-distance phase. I've been trying hard to stay positive, hoping things might go back to how they were when we lived together, but that optimism is fading. I thought I could have the best of both worlds, the career and the guy, but I'm stuck at a crossroads instead, and I'm incredibly stressed and heartbroken. This is supposed to be an exciting time but is just dreadful because of all of this. Any thoughts? Please be brutally honest, especially if I could have proceeded differently with this. Edit. The main issue isn't that he hasn't proposed. If he had concerns about a marriage or wasn't ready, he needs to tell me, but he either hasn't told me or whenever I've asked, he brushes it off and says he wants to marry me. My main issue is his consistency. He says one thing but doesn't demonstrate it through his actions. I've talked to him about this, and his response is always that he'll try harder. When it comes to his video games and sports, I really make an effort not to be too controlling or picky about how he spends his free time. I've been in relationships before where I felt manipulated and hurt for being perceived as too controlling, so I'm extra careful not to repeat that pattern. I'm supportive of him hanging out with the boys and trying to get to know them as well. Although these things aren't my go-tos, I try to watch sporting events with him and play video games with him to try to understand the hype. Now for the update. Holy crap y'all, it took me 4 months but I did it, I ended it. This update is also a doozy, so bear with me. Over the past 4 months, all our relationship has been his talks of either marriage/engagement or taking me out on when he never actually does the things he says he'll do. Lots of gaslighting, manipulation, the works. Whenever I wanted to have a conversation about serious stuff, for example where to live, finances, kids, etc., he brushed it off like it was nothing. This was how I knew he was not planning for the future. Apparently his parents know more about his financial situation than I do, which though, don't get me started. I approached them about it, and they showed me how many loans he has. It was astronomical, and he hadn't paid a dime since he graduated from college 4 years ago. He had 0 expenses. Nothing. This made me upset because not only did I have expenses, but I was working insane hours to pay for school and for my expenses, and he didn't make any attempts to have a stable, consistent job over the summer. At that point, I was done. It took a lot of courage to leave, especially considering the problems with his mom. It was quite an ordeal when I finally ended things this past weekend. I expected her to be really upset about it, especially because I got rid of a gift she really liked. But it turned out to be a relief. I felt like I narrowly escaped a difficult situation. The conversation was a mess. It felt like being around a toddler throwing a huge tantrum. He was crying, pacing around, throwing things I'd given him, and even accused me of cheating when I explained how the long-distance situation was affecting my feelings for him. He tried to bribe me with stuff to stay with him like a Nintendo Switch bra. He guilted me for all the dates he took me on over the summer and in college years ago. Keep in mind, I was paying for undergrad and graduate school out of pocket and had no money. He accused me of never wanting him to be happy. The worst part, when I told his mom we broke up, it was essentially a don't let the door hit you on the way out kind of conversation. She basically said, sorry, all broke up, have a good life, sayonara, Sammy, etc. To be honest, I was hoping she'd yell at me or bite my head off just so I could see her stick up for him a little bit. Just to show me she truly cares about his well-being and not just her own for whenever he decided to leave her. I'm sad and extremely anxious because I left something that was comfortable and don't know what the future brings. I hated hurting him, but he has inflicted a lot pain and doubts into my mind. A lot of you said in the comments that I'm young and that it will be okay, and you're right. But being a girl in your 20s is so hard, especially with finding/maintaining friendships and relationships. It'll be fine though. Thank you for the advice and support. And thank you for taking the time to read all of my word vomit. The Reddit community is truly amazing. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend I'm not ready to marry her? My 29 male girlfriend, 29 female have been together for a year and a half. We live together in a house I bought alone. Honestly, she's an amazing person. She's extremely caring, thoughtful, sexy, always in the mood, etc. She's a sexy saint. However, we see life very, very differently with the money. For instance, I make more than double her income, and because of this, I pay the vast majority of the bills, which I'm honestly fine with. She helps out with groceries and some bills. It works. The problem is that she has lots of disposable income, and she treats it as such. She never has money for the things she needs. Her car has problems. She needs to go borrow money from me. She wants to go on vacation. She racks up massive credit card bills. She generally owes me between $1,000 minus $4,000 at any given time. It's been a cycle where she pays me back, then ends up needing more money later on. I'm sure she's not using it for drugs. It seems she spends it all on unnecessary things, like constantly buying new dishes, for instance. Trying to talk to her is tough. She reacts strongly to things that don't seem logical to me. For instance, I was previously engaged before we started dating, and that seems to be a point of contention for her. She knew this. I've had junk mail show up with my ex's name on it, and I got absolutely blasted from her. She threatens to pack up and leave because of things like this that I don't think I have control over, and she will not explain why she's so mad about it. Lots of things like this have been building recently. The straw that broke the camel's back and destroyed my spark for her happened. She talked about marriage, having kids, etc. I asked her why she wants to get married, and she said because she wants to throw a party. This seems wildly inappropriate and a weak reason to make such a strong commitment. So I told her I'm not ready to marry her because of the reasons above and similar things that aren't mentioned for length purposes. She lost her mind, cried, said she was going to pack up, said things are not salvageable, and then changed her mind and wants to work it out. Am I the a-hole now for the type of comments? Boomer Quest. Immature and emotionally unstable. She's 30. She's not going to grow out of it. Run. Don't have sex with her. You're going to get her pregnant. It's baffling to see many posts echoing a similar theme. People often express deep love for their partners, praising their wonderful qualities. However, they also mention enduring constant financial and emotional abuse. They share how their reasonable boundaries are disregarded and how they're penalized for minor matters or simply for being true to themselves. These partners tend to reveal irrational jealousy, possessiveness, control, selfishness, instability, and a lack of empathy during challenging conversations. There's no way to communicate with them at all when they're upset. Why would you stay with this person if they treat you as you describe, let alone ask if you were the a-hole for not marrying on a whim? The reason she saw a wedding as just a party shows she doesn't think of you as a person she wants to commit to and build a life with. She thinks of you as someone who is never going to leave her anyway and is great for funding a lavish party. She clearly was trying to manipulate you, and then when it didn't seem to be getting the result, she wanted switch tactics. She knows what she has in you and, of course, doesn't want to leave the very cushy life you let her have, at least not until she's locked down what she thinks would be a better prospect story for. Am I too a hole for telling my ex that my current husband is a better father to our kids than he is? I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son with my ex-husband. He left me right before my son was born for his current wife and only has them every other weekend. It seems like fate brought my new husband into our lives when my daughter began pre-K at her school, where he was student teaching. He's now an elementary school teacher and a wonderful stepfather to my first 2 kids. Together we've had another daughter, who's now 13 months old. He shares a special bond with all the children. They love him, and he loves them right back. He and my ex don't get along very well. They're very different people, and it's only gotten worse. My ex is very much a fun dad and lets them basically do whatever they want, while my husband is so much more of an actual parent. A lot of the tension got worse when my ex learned that my husband had taught our son how to ride his bike. He was livid and said that he had robbed him of a vital father-son moment. My husband apologized and said that in the future he'd double-check with him before anything like that. I think it's not fair that he apologized because my ex had shown no desire to teach him how to ride it and didn't keep a bike for him or asked for his. It also meant a lot to my husband because he didn't learn how to ride a bike until he was in early 20s, since no one ever taught him how, and was a great bonding moment for him and my son. I know that my husband wanted to avoid starting problems and did actually feel guilty. That was 6 months ago, and my ex has made some snide remarks about my husband to me since then. That's heart-wrenching to hear. It must be incredibly tough for your daughter to grapple with those words from her father. She might need some reassurance and support to help her understand that she's always important and loved by her stepfather, regardless of the family dynamics. Offering her comfort and reaffirming your husband's care for her could help ease her worries and reaffirm her place in the family. But it's okay because her real dad still loves her. I was freaking livid. My husband and my daughter have an incredible bond and loves her dearly, and she idolizes him. My ex saying that to her is absolutely horrible. I called my ex and ripped into him and told him he was a horrible man and father, and that when our kids are older, they'll want nothing to do with him. When they realized that my husband has been their real dad, he didn't really fight back to his credit and let me yell at him. And then when he started to talk, I hung up on him. He has not reached out to me since, but his wife and sister have, both of which told me I was a horrible person for saying that to him. He accused me of saying negative things about him to our kids. I do not, and that I owe him an apology. I do not think I do, and I'm still furious. My husband is also pissed, but he had a long talk with my daughter and she seems okay now, and he's putting in extra effort to spend time with both her and my son. I asked my daughter if he said anything bad about my husband, and she said that he sometimes calls him weak, but that's it, and said she'll tell me if he ever does again. Am I the a-hole? I don't think I am, but I'm willing to accept that I may have taken it too far in what I said to him, despite how crappy what he did was. And that's all for today.